Imagine a world plunged into endless twilight, a world where the sun's warmth is a distant memory. Picture cities shrouded in perpetual gloom, their vibrant lights replaced by an eerie, unsettling darkness, where the sun is just a memory, a forgotten star obscured by a thick, impenetrable veil. The sky, once a canvas of brilliant blues and fiery sunsets, is now a monotonous expanse of gray, a constant reminder of what has been lost. This isn't science fiction. It's a real possibility, a chillingly plausible scenario after a nuclear war. This isn't a movie plot, it's a potential future we must strive to avoid. The immediate horrors are obvious. The devastation is instant and widespread. The blast, a wave of unimaginable force tearing through everything in its path. The fire, an inferno consuming cities and landscapes, leaving behind a trail of ash and ruin. The radiation, an invisible killer contaminating the air, water, and soil, poisoning everything it touches. But the deadliest consequence comes after the long, slow burn of a crisis that extends far beyond the initial destruction. Starvation, a silent, creeping enemy that claims more lives than the bombs themselves. Scientists warn that a full-scale nuclear war, a conflict involving the world's major nuclear powers, could inject so much soot into the atmosphere, a massive cloud of black carbon blotting out the sun, that it would trigger a nuclear winter, plunging the planet into a prolonged period of extreme cold and darkness, leading to the starvation of billions, a catastrophic loss of life on an unprecedented scale. Over 5 billion people, a number so large it's difficult to comprehend, more than half the world, facing a desperate fight for survival in a world stripped of its ability to sustain them, could die from hunger, succumbing to the slow, agonizing effects of malnutrition and famine. This wouldn't be a quick disaster, a fleeting moment of chaos and destruction, but a slow, grinding global famine lasting years, a prolonged period of suffering and hardship that would test the limits of human endurance. Our global food system would collapse overnight, the intricate network of farms, transportation, and distribution grinding to a halt. Supermarket shelves would empty in hours, panic buying stripping stores bare as people desperately try to secure what little food remains, and supply chains would break, the flow of food from producers to consumers completely disrupted. Survivors of the blasts would face a world unable to feed them, a desolate landscape where the basic necessities of life are scarce and fiercely contested. The numbers are staggering. The scale of the potential catastrophe is almost beyond comprehension. 5 billion at risk, 5 billion lives hanging in the balance, threatened by the specter of starvation. The cause? The failure of agriculture on a planetary scale. The inability to grow food in a world ravaged by nuclear war. Cold, a relentless, bone-chilling cold that penetrates everything. Darkness, a suffocating darkness that blankets the earth, depriving plants of the sunlight they need to grow. And a poisoned environment would make growing food impossible, the soil contaminated with radiation and toxins, rendering it barren and lifeless. Survivors would compete for dwindling resources in a desperate struggle, turning against each other in a desperate attempt to secure the few remaining scraps of food. This is the terrifying secondary consequence of nuclear war. The silent killer that lingers long after the bombs have fallen, a self-inflicted wound on humanity, a devastating blow to our ability to survive and thrive on this planet. Scientific studies and climate models confirm these outcomes, providing irrefutable evidence of the devastating impact of nuclear war on the global food supply. Even a limited nuclear conflict, a regional war involving a relatively small number of nuclear weapons, like one between India and Pakistan, a scenario that has been a source of concern for decades, could cause a global food crisis, triggering widespread famine and social unrest across the world. The message is clear. The stakes are incredibly high, and the consequences of inaction are dire. Nuclear weapons threaten not just cities, not just the immediate targets of a nuclear attack, but the very foundation of human civilization, the complex systems and infrastructure that allow us to feed ourselves and sustain our way of life. The dinner plate becomes the ultimate battleground for survival, the symbol of a world struggling to feed itself in the aftermath of nuclear war. The warning is not abstract. It's not a theoretical exercise or a distant possibility. It's a call to recognize the true cost of nuclear war, to understand the full extent of the devastation it could unleash. Our ability to feed ourselves is at stake. Our capacity to produce enough food to sustain the global population is hanging by a thread. The threat is real and the consequences are unimaginable. We must act now to prevent this nightmare from becoming a reality. What exactly is nuclear winter? It's a term that evokes images of a world plunged into darkness and cold. But what's the science behind it? What are the chain of events that would lead to such a devastating outcome? It all starts with fire. Massive firestorms ignited by the immense energy released from nuclear bombs. These aren't just ordinary fires. They're firestorms that generate their own weather systems, creating intense updrafts and swirling infernos. These infernos send colossal plumes of black soot, smoke, and ash soaring high into the atmosphere. The sheer scale of these plumes is staggering, dwarfing anything seen in typical wildfires. This soot doesn't just stay in the lower atmosphere, it's lofted into the stratosphere, a stable layer far above where rain can wash it away. Now multiply this by hundreds or even thousands of nuclear detonations across the globe, each contributing to the growing cloud of soot, and you get a planet-encircling shroud of soot, a thick blanket that envelops the entire globe, blocking out the sun's life-giving rays. This soot blocks sunlight, drastically reducing the amount of solar energy reaching the Earth's surface, plunging the world into a perpetual, frigid twilight. Global average temperatures could plummet by more than 15 degrees Celsius, a drop that would have devastating consequences for ecosystems and agriculture. Some regions, particularly inland areas, would experience freezing temperatures even during the summer months, making it impossible to grow crops. The sky would darken with a thick layer of smoke, seasons would become unpredictable and unreliable, and the world as we know it would become a profoundly hostile environment, struggling to sustain life. Rain patterns would dramatically shift across the globe, disrupting established weather systems, causing widespread droughts in some areas and catastrophic flooding in others, leading to widespread agricultural failure and famine. The darkness and cold wouldn't be a short-term event. They would persist for years, creating a prolonged period of environmental stress. This is because the soot particles are incredibly small and take a long time to settle out of the stratosphere. This is not just about the immediate destruction of cities and infrastructure. It's a fundamental shattering of Earth's delicate climate balance with consequences that would ripple through every ecosystem. Nuclear winter is, in essence, an artificially induced ice age, a catastrophic climate event triggered by our own weapons of mass destruction. The science behind nuclear winter is clear and well established, based on climate models and atmospheric research, and the consensus is that the consequences of such a scenario would be utterly catastrophic for all life on Earth. Nuclear weapons have been used in war only twice: Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 1945. Those bombs killed tens of thousands instantly and left cities in ruins. Survivors, the Hibakusha, endured burns, radiation, and lifelong suffering. Yet those bombs were primitive compared to today's weapons. Modern warheads are hundreds of times more powerful, capable of creating firestorms that would inject far more soot into the atmosphere. The reality of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is a sobering baseline, a warning of what even a small nuclear use means. Despite this, thousands of nuclear weapons remain ready to launch. The ghosts of 1945 remind us the threat is not history, it's our present and future. In a nuclear winter, agriculture, the very foundation upon which our civilization is built, would face unprecedented challenges. Our intricate systems of food production, honed over millennia, would be pushed to the brink of collapse. It would be the first casualty, the initial domino to fall in a chain reaction of devastation. The consequences would be far-reaching, impacting every corner of the globe and every facet of human life. Our staple crops, corn, the golden grain that feeds billions wheat, the staff of life for countless cultures rice, a cornerstone of diets across Asia soy, a versatile protein source vital for both humans and livestock, all depend on stable temperatures, consistent sunlight, and predictable rainfall patterns. These are the delicate threads that weave together the tapestry of agricultural success. Nuclear winter would utterly destroy that balance, plunging the world into an era of agricultural chaos. The predictable seasons would become a thing of the past. Corn, for example, needs warmth and sun to thrive, to convert sunlight into the energy that fuels its growth. But in a nuclear winter, U.S. cornfields would freeze, locked in a perpetual state of icy dormancy. The result? A catastrophic failure, producing no harvest at all. Fields would stand barren and lifeless. Wheat, rice, and soy, equally vulnerable, would also fail worldwide, leading to widespread crop failure across the globe. Pollinators like bees, essential for the reproduction of countless plants, would die, unable to survive the harsh conditions. And rainfall would become unpredictable, swinging wildly between devastating droughts and catastrophic floods. The global food chain, already strained in many parts of the world, would unravel from its base, leading to widespread shortages and instability. Livestock would starve, deprived of the feed they need to survive. All as crops disappear, leaving empty fields and barren landscapes in their wake. Within a year, the planet's ability to produce food would be nearly wiped out, pushing humanity to the brink of survival. Mass starvation would follow, a grim reaper sweeping across the globe, just as scientists predict based on their extensive research and modeling. The collapse would be total, a complete and utter failure of our agricultural systems. No region would be spared, from the fertile plains of North America to the rice paddies of Asia. The world's breadbaskets, the regions that feed the planet, would become barren wastelands, unable to sustain life. The end of agriculture in this scenario means the end of civilization as we know it, a descent into chaos and a struggle for survival. How do scientists know this? Through advanced computer modeling. They simulate nuclear war scenarios, tracking soot in the atmosphere and its effects on climate. These models show rapid, sustained drops in temperature and sunlight. Next, crop models predict how staple foods would fare in this new world. Even a small war, like one between India and Pakistan, could cut global food production by 7%, enough to trigger a crisis. A full-scale US-Russia war could slash food output by 90% in just a few years. These aren't guesses. They're based on physics and biology. The models consistently show agriculture would collapse and famine would follow. The science transforms nuclear war from an abstract fear into a quantifiable global disaster. The warnings are rigorous, not speculative. The outcome is clear. Nuclear war means global starvation. Nuclear winter brings another threat, the destruction of the ozone layer. Nuclear firestorms create nitrogen oxides that rise with soot, destroying ozone molecules. The soot also heats the stratosphere, accelerating ozone loss. Scientists predict a large-scale nuclear war could destroy over 3/4 of the ozone layer. As the soot clears, sunlight returns, now supercharged with deadly UV radiation. A few minutes outdoors could cause severe sunburn, cancer rates would soar, high UV would further cripple crops and harm survivors. The return of the sun would bring a new invisible danger. The end of the Cold War didn't end the nuclear threat, it just changed it. Today, 9 countries possess nuclear weapons and tensions simmer worldwide. The war in Ukraine, nuclear threats from Russia, and flashpoints like India-Pakistan keep the risk alive. Even a regional conflict could trigger a global famine. North Korea and US-China rivalry add more instability. Thousands of warheads remain ready to launch. Every crisis, every missile test is a roll of the dice with humanity's future. The threat is not history, it's now. As long as these weapons exist, nuclear winter remains a real danger. The science is a warning we cannot ignore. Faced with nuclear winter, despair is natural, but so is the will to survive. Small groups might endure finding food in unexpected places. Mushrooms and fungi could be grown in the dark, feeding a few. Coastal survivors might fish or harvest seaweed, though the oceans would also suffer. Some might forage roots, process wood, or raise insects for protein. Food stores would become priceless treasures. Communities would reorganize around survival, but life would be brutal and primitive. These strategies offer hope for only a tiny fraction. Billions would perish, survival would be the exception, not the rule. Scientists model these scenarios not to guide survival, but to urge prevention. The true path is not learning to live after nuclear war, but ensuring it never happens. Our resilience is real, but it cannot overcome a dead planet. Earth is a fragile oasis in the cosmos. For the first time, one species, us, can trigger its own extinction. The science of nuclear winter is a warning, not a forecast. The laws of physics won't save us from our own actions. Block the sun and crops fail. Crops fail and civilization collapses. The only rational response is prevention. Eliminating nuclear weapons is the only way to eliminate the risk. This requires global cooperation and a new vision of security. We must demand leaders work toward a nuclear-free world. Education is our best preparation. Everyone must understand the consequences. The choice is ours. Step back from the brink or